What's good, everyone? It's Zigzag here. Welcome back to another Geoguessr video. Today I'm going to be talking about the European, Middle East, and Africa Championships, which we just had over in Stockholm. I had the privilege of working on the desk and doing a bit of commentary over there. As I said in my vlog, I had a really great time. And in today's video, I'm going to be basically going over the tournament, talking about what happened, my thoughts about what happened, what we can expect to see in the future from these players right here, and then about the map and kind of the way the tournament went, the format, and different kind of thoughts I have about that. Obviously, these will all be my own opinions, so you can disagree, agree. Good to have a discussion in the comments because we want to see this esport thrive and going into the future very strongly. I'll leave timestamps for the different sections of what I'm going to talk about. But firstly, let's talk about the success of the event. I mean, it had great viewership on YouTube. I think the VOD has like 500,000 views, which is actually crazy. Extremely good viewership, and that really makes me confident that these tournaments will continue to happen because obviously it does cost the Geoguessr devs a lot of money to put everyone up in Stockholm and to get everyone there. So yeah, it's quite an investment, but I think it's proving to be quite a success as well as the viewership grows from tournament to tournament. So let's talk about these players here. This was my tier list for the strength of the players before the tournament began when I was back in Australia. And now that I'm back, we can review how I did on the picks. So obviously Blinky and Concess were pretty much everyone's S tier picks, and neither of them made it far. Blinky, well, they both made it to the World Cup, of course, both in the top 8, but both getting knocked out before the semi-finals. Blinky, I think, was outplayed on the day by Kratzo. I do think Kratzo is the inferior player to Blinky, but he just had a really nice day and definitely played super nicely. And then Concess was sick. I think that's a big, well, I don't want to say that that's like the reason that Topotic beat him. Topotic actually played a great game against Concess, very high skilled stuff, but I just think what I wanted to say about that, not disrespecting Topotic's gameplay at all, but just saying that, you know, Concess could have brought a better game on that. He wasn't playing to his usual standard. It's well possible, and in fact maybe likely, that Topotic would have beaten him with those guesses anyway, but Concess, you know, he wasn't all the way to his normal capacity, and apparently he was really quite sick. So that is what I've heard there. From what I could tell, he did seem kind of under the weather, so that would check out. As for the A tier, Crooksed, I think Crooksed is very unlucky to have not gone further in the tournament. All he had to do was beat Wolf Trekker, but a very cheeky Greenland prevented him from doing so, and then he ended up having to beat Lenley to get that spot. So these guys both almost qualified, but it wasn't quite the case for Lenley, and he just missed out. Speaking of Lenley, I mean, obviously such a great friend of mine, didn't quite play to his full potential in this tournament, I would say. Definitely brought a nice level of gameplay to that final game against Crooks, but didn't quite make it as far as I had expected. Debre, I mean, you know, unlucky to have lost to Finbar and then not to have made it further in the tournament. Of course, he could have well gone on to win the whole tournament were it because of the fact that Blinky and Concess were out. And then Topotic, my other A tier pick, was the champion, so I'm glad I put him so high. And yeah, I mean, Topotic is super strong. And I think that's about all we need to talk about here. I guess other upsets were like Sarlek having an astounding day one, so I really got him wrong. You know, the other three down here did not qualify, sadly. Kodiak made it a bit further than I thought, or made it to the semifinals, so definitely further than I thought, so really well played to him. Sarlek, probably the best player to miss out on the World Cup this time. I think he played definitely at a level where he could have been a World Cup contender and just missed out. And Armani made it through to the World Cup without winning a single moving game, so that's quite an achievement. A man after my own heart in a way. So that was cool to see him, hold his spot in B tier. That was what I was hoping he would do, and he did it. Okay, now let's talk about the Geoguessr map that they're using for the World Cup. I have quite a few thoughts about the map that they used here, and that has implications for what I think the format should be, so I hope I can make it pretty clear here. So basically, if we cast our eyes back to the World Cup, that was all played on one big map. So the NMPZ games and the moving games were played on the exact same map. I don't think this was a particularly good idea, and I'm very pleased that they changed it so that, for example, the no moving, panning, or zooming game can include more locations where it wouldn't be pinpointable and that kind of thing, not easy for moving rounds, and vice versa. The moving rounds don't therefore have to be panned away from information all the time because no moving would be too easy if there was always information, that kind of thing. I mean, it matters more for NMPZ where the locations are and what they're panned to, of course, because that's all you get, but it's still all relevant to, you know, where the info is going to be when you move around as well. And, you know, the map itself, it wasn't too bad. It definitely wasn't too bad. but it was a bit heavy on the info, especially for the no moving and NMPZ. And there was also not enough big countries, which I think is something they really addressed going through to the Americas and then Europe. So I'm really pleased about that. Honestly, the Americas and Europe have been a big step up above the 2023 World Cup, which is, good. So all that comes with this caveat that, yeah, things have really improved and I am happy with the direction that things have taken. So casting our mind to the Americas map, it then all of a sudden is a way harder map on all three formats. They just turned up the difficulty for everything, and definitely a lot of people were commenting about how even though all three maps were different, so there were different locations inside the moving map, ones with a bit of extra info compared to the no moving and no moving panning or zooming, there didn't feel like a whole lot of differentiation between the maps themselves. And let me get some gameplay going in the background here. I also felt that the map was all of a sudden much less suited to moving, so I understood why some moving players were a little bit disappointed about that. Then again, I think it's worth pointing out that Jake Lyons basically won most of, if not all of his moving games for the whole tournament, and Gingy ended up winning the entire tournament, and I could be wrong. I don't think he won a single moving game. If not, he won very few moving games, that's for certain. So just an interesting fact to throw out there, even though the moving map was significantly rural, the moving player still had a big advantage in finding info and that kind of thing, as you would expect. But coming to the Europe Championship, which we're watching on the screen right now, when we were inside the moving games, it was immediately apparent. I think I knew that it was going to happen, but when we got into the first game, it was so apparent that the map had changed. All of a sudden, it was much more urban heavy. There was always information, at least if not at the spawn point, then you could be pretty reliably sure that it would be somewhere, a few clicks, or not a few clicks, but some amount of clicks that would be achievable within a minute, one direction or the other. And that immediately annoyed me, admittedly, because I'm like, wow, I'm going for this, and what hope do I have to play against people who've been playing moving for years? Because consider this, I started playing Geoguessr 3.5 years ago. I never played moving. I basically have spent far less than 1% of the entire time I've played Geoguessr on moving, and that is definitely the case. So it's really hard for me to compete with people unless there are some rural rounds sprinkled in. The first round I was getting really depressed. I was like, how am I going to be making through the World Cup when moving is so emphasized as the first game? But after watching the first seed and, I settled down a bit and I was a bit more objective. I was like, we do want to differentiate moving and NMPZ. They should at least be somewhat different. And it stands to reason that if everyone's insta-sending, then you're going to get a game that's maybe too similar to no moving. Well, at least that's the argument, and I definitely think there is merit to that argument. So after watching the entire event, I wasn't so annoyed as I was when I first saw it, and I definitely see the merits to it. But I wanted to show you guys this infographic from day one, which kind of shows why I'm talking about this. So in the entirety of day one, Group A and Group B were actually identical, and in all of the games, we had 26 games played on this day, so 2 here, 26 total. Out of the 26, only 2 were NMPZ. So 12 moving, 12 NM, and then only 2 NMPZ. So obviously, as an NMPZ player, as someone who's, dedicated my, basically entire last 2 years to, grinding NMPZ, getting really good at that, it's like, oh, well, if the moving player essentially gets, not a free pass, but an extremely favorable opportunity on round 1 to win that, then it leaves me and other people who prefer NM and NMPZ in a very, very difficult situation that was kind of created firstly by the format, but also by this big change in the map, which, as I said, I don't necessarily think the map change is all bad. And so that is why I want to propose a small alteration to the format, which I think would make it more fair for the 3 skill sets and also more interesting for the viewer. Okay, so firstly, let me tell you what exactly the format is. So currently, as you guys know, it goes moving, then no moving, then NMPZ. It's always like that, and that's why, a lot of these games ended in a sweep instead of going to all 3 maps. And of course, it's more exciting viewing if it goes to 3 regularly, and that wasn't happening. So my idea is that instead of, having this set order, is that in the pre-game interview, which at the moment just serves the purpose of asking questions, you would actually add some intrigue by having each player nominate their preferred mode against that particular opponent. So let's suppose I go against Blinky. Blinky steps up first for the pre-game interview. I was doing the interviewing. I'll be like, well, obviously in this situation, if I'm playing against him, he's not interviewing. Bloom's gonna go, hey Blinky, how you going? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what is your mode pick gonna be? And then Blinky would say moving. If he's playing me, he's only gonna pick moving, right? And so then I would step up, and of course I would pick NMPZ, and that would leave the common ground to be the third one, which in this case would be no moving. So that is either the one that both players are comfortable playing and think they have less of an advantage at, or, the one that both players suck at, I guess, that's left over. Either way, I think it makes it more entertaining because it adds the tactics. One, you're thinking about your opponent much more, and you're like, how can I counter-strike him? Maybe it is the case that I come up against another guy who hates moving as well, but he actually secretly prepared for moving against me. So he's like, okay, I've at least done enough moving that I'm going to pick moving against Zigzag because I think he's weak in that. And it just adds like a really big storyline. And I think that also ties into the fact that we're on the desk talking about this stuff. We're like, oh, Armani, here comes Armani. He's a massive NMPZ player. He loves that. And in the group stage, he plays one game on there. And it's like, okay, like we did all this analysis about Armani's NMPZ game and then he doesn't even get to play. That could be a much better storyline if Armani comes up against Blinky and then Armani's immediately picking NMPZ, Blinky goes moving, and they take one each, and then it goes down to no moving, which is kind of the middle ground. It of course doesn't have to be that order, but I anticipate that would often be the case. But yeah. So to add to my argument here, I think this is like something that's often seen in other esports where there's a pick ban stage, or there is some kind of tactics that go in before the start of the game where decisions are made. And I think that would put Geoguessr in a more esports adjacent kind of feeling to the pregame, and I think that would be really valuable. Additionally, and of course, I know that this change would, somewhat benefit me because, I am an NMPZ player. But to be fair, as I said, like the moving players lobbied after this, after the Americas tournament. And so I'm doing a little bit of my own lobbying now, to be fair. But I asked the other players and basically everyone liked it. Out of the players I asked at the World Cup, most said they liked it. Some were very enthusiastic. Others, they were like, yeah, it's cool. And only one player, actually said he didn't like the idea, but that's fair enough. Not everyone's gonna love it, but I think what I'm saying is it was popular among the pros who I asked, even the ones who stand not to benefit from the change. Although if you think I'm putting words in your mouth, anyone in the comments, feel free to say otherwise. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, this is basically my proposition for the format. And I think if this format goes ahead, I have no problem with the moving map being quite stacked in terms of information and benefiting moving players, and the NMPZ map to remain quite baity in the way it is a very difficult map. If not, I think that the maps should be brought closer in line with each other, where maybe the NMPZ has more info and the moving has more rural rounds, just to make it, more, achievable for those players who specialize in one. Because at the moment, it is like, I don't know, it definitely just feels a bit too telegraphed. Like we know that most moving rounds are just going to end up being, near very useful info. And, it does kind of mean like often round 10 is a bit of an anticlimax with the round limit as well. But, this is my opinions as an NMPZ player, but also as someone who wants to see it, the whole thing improve. And I do think that what I'm suggesting is a significant improvement. So hopefully the devs are listening to this, and hopefully you guys can agree with me if you also like it. Hey, I'm hoping I get some disagreeing comments in the comment section as well, because that's part of the discussion, and no doubt my bias is kind of holding me back from understanding certain things as well. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought of the ideas, of course, as I've said, and cheers to Geoguessr for a massively successful tournament. Shout out to everyone who was involved, and I'm looking forward very much to competing. I am working on my moving a lot. I'm playing a lot. I feel quite strong at the moment, and hopefully that only increases with time. But guys, okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.